Over to you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for the invite. And well, here in Europe, it's morning, so I wish you a nice afternoon. Thanks to the kind introduction. I'll just try to give you an insight how we see a major impact of digitalization from our point of view. And our point of view is we approach the entire thing from an engineering point of view. Just to give you a quick idea on what's driving us. So usually we had been a fabrication company some 30 years ago. And over the last 10 years, there was a significant change going on. So about 10 years ago, there was a clear decision to focus on pharma market. And then we were trying to get better in skid technology. We were trying to get better in integrating process know-how into our automation systems via the vertical solutions. This led to quickly growing projects in terms of size and the need on executing these projects quicker. And so in 2017, we were offering our know-how as a general planner. And why I'm telling that is that our way of work changed a lot when it was 2017, because we were using a lot of digital tools then for planning, for electrical planning, for P&ID creation, for everything. But we realized that by putting together these different tools and exchanging data on a Excel format or whatever, this is not sustainable for us. So in 2018, we decided to digitize our engineering workflow. Like you know from an ERP system, everybody is digitizing the business-driven workflows in an ERP system up to, let's say, if the company exceeds a certain size. And we thought about how to implementing a digitized environment for our engineering workflow. And this is why we became experts in a number of domains in digitalization, and this is what was driving us. And now let's change the point of view. How does digitalization fit in if you look at it from a product lifecycle point of view? Well, I don't have to discuss that picture with you. Everything starts with the discovery, or at least it starts with the patient's need, and then we try to find something to cure it. We have to go through the clinical and preclinical phases, and finally we can end up in manufacturing. For us, the core is here in the middle between product release and clinical, because a lot of need is told us when you are about having a promising substance and you need some new production facility. So our core business is taking care about the project execution down to qualification and validation support. But in the last years, we realized that this is not the only thing. Of course, we want to serve our customers during the life cycle. So we started to introduce services. And on the other hand, we realized that we need a lot of know-how for tech transfer, GMP topics and process development and scaling if we want to sufficiently serve our customers. So it's these three things that we care about within the middle. It's the core of project execution, and digitalization, data integrity, IT platforms somehow are the glue between these three domains that we are currently working in. And this is the other view, how we consider digitalization as being a relevant core part of our daily business. So let's have a view on the pharma value chain and digital twins. So I like this approach is based on some colleagues from NNE, and they said, well, if we think about our value chain, it starts with the patient, and then it's the patient needs a specific treatment, and therefore we need a product. The product requests a specific process, and the process has to be hosted in a specific plant. Whereas the plant has to be fit for the process, which has to be fit for producing the right product, and the product has to be fit for the patient's treatment. So this is pretty standard, and we know about this approach. Now, how do the digital twin come in? Just imagine and you transform all of these 4 topics to the digital domain, and you try to get a digital representance of the physical patient, the physical product, or the physical process. This is where we say, what could be the digital twin of a patient? It's about its pattern in properties, its genome. It might be some disease characteristic or metabolic fluxes. The digital twin of the product can be seen as its product structure, its properties, its design. And you can go forward. Of course, there is a digital twin of the process, which covers the process steps, the equipment, the critical process parameters, and its simulation. And also you can think about the transfer from real to digital as a 3D model of the plant, which then represents the digital twin of the plant. And again, in this domain, you can think about that also the digital representance has to collaborate with the other domains. So this is why when we at ZETA talk about the digital twin, we don't see that there is this one digital twin, but we see different build outs of the digital twin for different purposes. And I want to follow this concept a little to give you some ideas that we discovered in the last time. Then there's the question, how do you create these digital twins? And creating these digital twins is more or less the digital engineering approach. So if you combine all the different tasks from process engineering to mechanical engineers, the plant engineers, the electrical engineers, the automation engineers, if you combine all these disciplines over the tasks, like for basic engineering, for detail engineering, for qualification topics, then you're creating this content representing as well the digital twin of the plant, but also the digital twin of the process, more or less as you work. And what you can do with it is you can use this deep digital information for reducing the project risks. It's easier to manage interfaces since you're in one digital platform. You can improve change management and you have a transparent project progress, but you also can significantly reduce time for qualification and validation by using the content of this digital twin as seen in different documents, in different scenarios, in the 3D models where you can train your operators, or you can even integrate VR or AR solutions. So transforming the way you work during engineering and fabrication to total digital domain delivers digital twins for process and plant with significant benefits during startup and commissioning. There is two other views on the digital twins, like product and process. So it's about getting a digital twin of the product and then the process, and how do you create these ones? Well, we have been talking about how you can cover the digital twin of the process. It's the same like we already did. And if you want to capture the digital twin of a product, it's what usually you describe as a bioprocess modeling. So you're trying to get an idea on how do you create this product you're looking for. How do you create a process that is securely delivering this kind of product? And then you're in the domain of DOE, modeling, data science expertise. And on the other hand, how to create the process we're already discussing about. And what could you use these digital twins for? It's, well, QBD and DOE, they're relatively frequently used terms, how you should start looking at your development road. And this is like you go for improved process understanding, you try to get a scientific-based approach, and you're using the data for finding out how your process and your product are interacting. And if you do it in an even more smart way, you can also use the combination of this knowledge for getting model-based design of experiment, which means that you're not screening the room as you the space as you were used to, but you say, well, I know something about my process already. I want to have the experiments in this or that domain because there it looks most promising, and I don't have to test areas of my design space where I know that the process optimum won't be. Or it leads to new approaches, like you are actively changing the parameters during a cultivation, and you go towards the intensified DOE approach. As a free bonus, you could reuse these models during manufacturing as soft sensors and process control and operator training. So also in this domain, digitalization plays an important role. So well, everything's done, huh? Well, almost. If you look from a different point and you say, what questions do we want to get answered by this approach? It depends from which perspective you look at it. If you're talking about this product and process topic, it's about how do different process conditions influence the product. It's about how can I use the generated process information to reduce experimental effort. It's how safe is the process for the product. And this is the domain of our end customers, and it's the domain of some consulting companies in the field of AI, ML, or whatever. So these are the drivers and the players in the field of playing the most significant role between product and process. It's a little bit different when you look who is involved in combining process and plant. Then it's about the engineering companies. It's about how do different scales and type influence the process to deliver an industrial scale process that meets the needs of the end customers. It's about what resulting equipment do I need for industrial production, what CapEx costs have to be expected, by which OpEx costs do I deliver a safe process regarding the operator, and how to meet the qualification and validation requirements. So having a view on these two steps, process and plant, and its digital twins, you have way different questions. And we thought about why not combining all three of them? Why not combining all the know-how and the digital things that you have at hand and saying, well, if I have a model of the product and the process from the development point of view, why not combining it with a model of the process and the plant? There would be some significant advantages. Like you always need a little bit of the know-how that you gained in this domain when you want to create the perfect plant. So we would definitely improve in the engineering results if we had access to all the know-how that was delivered at an earlier stage. So using the process models to implement quality by design, even then in the manufacturing side, like using the process models for controlling and optimization of a currently realized plant, that would be much more efficiently applicable if you would have a look at all these three topics out of one approach. But of course, there are some challenges to come that way. It's one challenge is the different IT platforms. Usually during product and process development, you're in a wet lab, you're in a non-GMP environment, or you're just moving over to GMP. You have small skits, you have all these laboratory environments. And when you're in the manufacturing in a site, you have DCS, you have all these established systems, all validated. So it's integrating these different IT platforms that is a challenge. But also it's a challenge to overcoming the silos that the people in the company, the employees that are working research, they have a different point of view like the other ones in development or the guys on commercial approach. So also from that point of view, we don't talk the same language, which is a little bit hard to get a common approach. And on top of that, we realized that it's not as easy as it looks coming in a climate of co-creation with the customer and the supplier. You know, not all the time it's easy to be a partner of the end customer rather than just a supplier, because if you want to create these new approaches, you have to exchange with the customer on a different level than just on a, let me say, standard supplier level. So what is our vision? Our vision would start in a wet lab where you say, well, you have your unit operations, you want to combine to a new process, and you work with them based on digital twins of these unit operations. So you derive different models for different unit operations, and you create these digital twins, and then you combine them into a fully integrated simulation. So you already have a simulated production process of what you're going to expect in a digital format. And when you combine this, we should think how to reuse that for the shop floor in large-scale manufacturing. And this is where we would see you need a partner to break down the silos and to manage that entire process, that not only for the wet lab experiments you get the feedback out of these simulations, but you can also use it for the shop floor. So our vision is to combining the needs of the customers and their work in the wet lab experiment end and in the development with what consulting companies and software partners can deliver in terms of IT and finance, and trying to get a group of engineering companies that are able to manage that, all these available information, all these valuable insights you're creating based on the digitalization of your development process is applicable on the shop floor during manufacturing. So I would talk about using an upstream model that is exactly telling you how does a cultivation react on temperature changes, and use this model for online control of your cultivation in the validated environment to optimize, for example, the time for the feeding phase or the time for creating the biomass and the seeding phase. So you could see, you could look at that like it was a GPS in your car. The map is the model, and you need something that is running the model in the same time where the process is running in real time, and that is compensating for some changes on the real process. So that would be our idea, to reuse all the knowledge that is gained during development, cover it in digital twins, combine these digital twins and use it on the shop floor. And now I want to give you some ideas where we see the reuse of the digital twin. So I'm going to bring you some insight what we already realized by applications, or what we know about these digital twin applications. It's also seen as IoT applications, or you can look at some of these applications from the Pharma 4.0 point of view. So first thing I want to talk about is applying the digital twin during the project phase, during project execution for the design review. So this is something where you have already an ongoing project, you're co-creating with your customers, and you're using the digital twin for clarification of engineering details, for redlining and documentation, a little bit like somebody who is currently putting his drawings into the presentation. So We do that frequently. It's one of our standard procedures that, like you see here, when you're at a specific phase where we already have the 3D engineering of our plant, we go into collaboration with our customers, and then they say, well, due to ergonomic reasons, please move that valve 90 degrees to the right angle. And so this is documented here. Out of that, there is a collaborative tool, and we use this digital twin of the plant for co-creating with the customer how to change during the engineering phase. What secondly applied also in the design review phase is that at the end of an engineering phase, you get a 3D model. And in that case that I'm allowed to show here, it was the design of an entire SUT plant. So it was single use. And the topic was, are we sure that we have enough room for operation, for moving with the operators and all the other personnel? Because it was a given building and we had to squeeze in quite a bit of equipment. And so the customer together with us was relying on this 3D model of this digital twin of the plant to make sure that there is enough space for moving around. And you see, this is why all this auxiliary equipment is included here, because they really wanted to be sure that it can pass through and that there is enough space. So also in this point of view, you're using the digital twin of the plant, which is the 3D model, for securing operations. Another build out of the digital twin that we have at hand currently is using the digital twin or the combination for operator training. So when you go through this engineering, this digital engineering, you get pretty much of information. During the engineering, you have every electrical plan, you have the 3D model of the plant as such, you have all the information about automation, and you derive the DCS based on that. So you know about the piping, you know about the positioning of the valves, so you can roughly easily say, well, you can use the DCS and you're using the digital twin of the process, which is covering, let me say, the technical topics like pressure, temperature, and stuff like that. On top of that, you might put a bioprocess model that will then calculate the impact of the temperature on biomass involvement or on product formation. And you put that together, that you run the process out of a DCS even before the build is planned, because you have all these informations at hand before you go into fabrication of the entire plant. That means you can use the digital twin of the process of the product, which will be the bioprocess model. You will use the simulation of the process and your automation system for an online training of your operators. This you can use for replacing of the paper-based plant training. You can train routines like starting up, shutting down. The operators get used to the process dynamics. They get used to where the alerts will pop up, and they will get used to the environment they will work in. So this is combining the digital twin of the process, which is a process simulation, with a digital twin of the product, which is a bioprocess model, in combination with or based on the information you get of the engineering. Well, finally, there is a third application that I want to show you, which is not yet during or not positioned during the project execution, but rather when the plant is already up and running. It's about how to augment maintenance activities. And this is using a personal assistant for maintenance engineers. It's a roughly simple idea that you say you're creating such an enormous amount of information during engineering, all the wiring diagrams, all the documentation of spare parts. You know exactly where all your valves are positioned. You have 3D models, you have 2D floor plans, and we just thought about how to deliver that information in the context that is relevant for the maintenance engineer. So creating a personal assistant that allows for delivering the right information right to the shop floor where the where the maintenance engineer is working, delivers a value add on, let me say, exploiting the digital twin of the plant regarding all the context that is relevant for the maintenance engineer. So to give you a quick summary, how do I see what drives us in digitalization in the pharma industry? Everybody is working in software in engineering currently. Either it's AutoCAD or it's, I don't know, an Aviva or whatever environment they're using. Everybody is using software for drawing 3D models. You use software for creating a P&ID. You use software for doing the electrical planning. That means you're covering a lot of information. You're covering all the specifications that you want to do. You create the functional specification based on the needs of the end customers. If you do that in a digitized engineering environment and you put all these things together and you're able to manage that information in one central hub, then you get a really, really proper digital twin of your plant and of your process. And this is just because you go through that engineering work anyways. On top of that, if you think about a process model that is covering, like in this case, an upstream fermentation process, and you think how these technical process parameters interact with the quality of the product, you can deliver even more because you can suddenly get an idea how does a change in running the plant impact the quality of the product. That means you also have to think about how to include the knowledge that is created during product development and R&D. How do you combine that knowledge with all the models and the know-how that is done during engineering? And that leads to the third point, the co-creation between suppliers and end customers might open a lot of further benefits. What experience have we made? The silos within the companies are still roadblocks. Just very simple, you know, if the guys did a good job in the product development, they created a new treatment, and suddenly the purchasing department gets the order to start a new project, and then they go out and they're looking for an engineering company supporting them. And even the purchase department is not interlinked with the R&D department. But then the engineering company might ask for a number of questions that can be answered by the R&D department, but they are not included. So there are some silos at our customer side and also on our side that we have to overcome. Co-creation with end customers is not always easy because usually you're not by nature in a position to do co-creation with your end customer, because this means that you have to partner rather than just deliver. And the combination of the available technologies in terms of IT and software and the scientific process know-how for process modeling and stuff is not yet really exploited. That means that there is a lot of people out there that have excellent know-how, and they even apply technologies and process modeling that are really outstanding. But in the standard process of realizing projects, it's not thought of yet. That means that there would be a lot of different bits and pieces out there that we could put together to a totally new picture over the life cycle of a product and the plant. So overall, I hope I could give you some insight about what drives us from trying to fulfill the needs of a customer after the successful development of a new drug, to deliver a manufacturing site that fulfills the needs, how digitalization plays into these different topics, starting from R&D to engineering, and of course then to operations, and how digital twins or the digital representatives of the real physical world could help us to optimize these things in future. So I hope there is a number of questions, and if you have any, of course, please ask them now, but of course we would be happy, me and my colleague Sushan would be happy also to get in direct contact if you have some detailed questions that cannot be answered now. So this was it from my side, and now I'm giving back to my colleagues in Singapore, and I hope that there will be some interesting questions to discuss upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Interesting presentation. And we have our first question from Amit, who asks, during operation of the plant, there would be chance to optimize unit operations, further improve yield. Will digital twin collect data and use data from historians, LIMS and MES packages to further optimize the models which were created during engineering and initial tech transfers?
Yes. When you think about optimizing existing operations, of course, it is possible. You always have to think about the hurdle of validation, of course. So usually when you apply for a validated process, you define a specific space where you tell the authority, this is a safe space. In this domain, I will run my processing. This space is defined by temperature, pH, whatever. And within this space, you're allowed to move around and find your sweet spot for optimization. So when you're running the plant by applying the continuous process verification process, you can look on your data. This data will then contribute to the model of the process. So also the real data will contribute to the digital twin of the process, because the first process digital twin you get is based on most probably mechanistical data, mass balances, energy balances, and maybe some data out of the process development. But then you go to the real side, so you have the scaling effect, you have some other effects, and then you get the readings out of the real side, and then you can, let me say, refine the digital twin that you already defined during the R&D and during the engineering. And of course, you can also derive learnings based on that and feed that back to the real manufacturing side. This would be a part of the continuous process verification and would even be within the limits of the FDA, at least what has been told to me.
Thank you. Amit, do you have any comment, or does anyone else have any comment? Please post your questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the question.
No comment as such. Thanks for answering the question. So it definitely makes sense to further optimize the models during the operational phase as well. So will digital twin collect data during runtime, or that's a separate model which will reside on a server, and then we will have to feed the data from historian, LIMS, and other packages to the digital twin to further optimize? So will it be continuously pulling data, or it's standing offline and then you feed the data to the digital twin? How is that from the network perspective and from implementation perspective?
Okay, interesting question. I would say it could be both. It depends on the overall concept. What I mean is, if you know that, or if you think that one of your unit operations changed the way you were engineering it, because you engineer according to meet a certain optimum. This is what you try to do in engineering. And then it turns out that in reality, the optimum should be a little bit different. Then it's a question, is it to change one unit operation? Then you would update what you know about this unit operation in its digital format. So you would try to exceed the existing digital twin out of engineering by acquire data from the plant. To my expertise, I wouldn't do it on a continuous way. I would pick out data from situation that significantly show differences in the behavior of the unit operation to what I think is optimum. Because usually out of this situation, you gain most information. Secondly, what we realized with an end customer, a Swiss company, is that it wasn't about changing the unit operations as such so much, but it was how to orchestrate them. So they saw the biggest benefit in terms of throughput and quality gain by aligning and orchestrating the unit operations better than they thought it was during engineering. So it was fine-tuning, like getting a little bit, when I get a little bit more tighter out of my upstream, how do I fine-tune the downstream accordingly? So that the optimum of a number of unit operation is not necessarily defined by the optimum of each unit operation as such. It can happen that if you run the upstream at best as it could run, there is like too much yield for running a proper downstream, and that it would make more sense to getting down a little to supporting the sweet spot of the downstream best. So I see that this combination of unit operation to finding an optimum and a bigger picture is something that can be exploited as well.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Does anyone else have any questions or any comments? Martin, you must have explained it all very well and clearly.
Yeah, or it was simply not understandable. No, but honestly speaking, you're really, Linda, you're really happy to share also our contacts, or Sushant will care about it. Maybe some of the questions will come later, because it was somehow a very dense program and we tried to cover it in 30 minutes. There was one thing. I would like to know more about the regulatory aspect of a digital twin. Me too. No, honestly spoken, there is a lot of activities going on in the harmonization field and on the FDA field. It started with the PAT initiative, and there are some standard routines how you validate a mathematical model representing, for example, the digital twin of a process. Unfortunately, it's not, at least to my knowledge, not really frequently done. There was a not too good experience from Roche about 5 to 6 years ago, where they have elaborated their process according to quality by design. So they did a lot of experiments, they captured everything in mathematics, they had a very extensive digital twin of the process and the product. Unfortunately, during the validation phase, the inspector of the authority was not prepared for that. And so he said, well, I know everything you did nicely, but you're allowed to run in this point. So he didn't accept running in a bigger range where the proof or the provement of that you know what you're doing is based on a mathematical model, but he was stepping back to his comfort zone and saying, well, it's just here. I think times changed, and a lot of collaboration also between end customers and FDA have been established. So if you want to go for this new approach, you're still in the R&D phase. Drag in FDA experts, get in contact, share what you want to do, and they will definitely assist you. They even might create special task force for different topics. A few years ago, I was more engaged in the topic, so I'm not maybe on the latest information standard, but I know that there is a lot of things going on because FDA and the other authorities are interested to bring this innovation to the manufacture, the pharma facilities. In principle, everything is clear, but in detail, you have to talk with the authorities at the right time, not when you're done, and you hope that the inspector is able to follow what you elaborated.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Parasha, for your question. Are there any other questions? In the meantime, we've also posted up a link for you to put in any feedback for us, which will help us to improve. We would very much appreciate it if you could click on that link, and you can fill in that after the session if you like. Are there any other questions for Martin? We have about 10 minutes left. If not, then we might be able to let you off earlier.
It's fine for me. I thought, Linda, you have one question that you always wanted to ask me.
Okay, well, Bok Kim has a question for you, which is, what are challenges when adopting digital twin?
Well, I was trying to cover that. So I would, on the one side, I would say digital twin is just a fancy buzzword currently. And it really depends in which domain you see that topic. If you think about digital twin in the product and process segment, so in development, it was talked about bioprocess modeling now the last 20 years, and suddenly it's about creating the digital twin of a product and the process. So in that field, the application of the digital twin, if you see it as a model of the process and of the product, the hurdles are not too high. We had been in collaboration with some larger global companies, and they all said that usually they do work scientifically based, so they run their DOEs, they're using the data, and based on that data, they do some mathematical analytics to derive their knowledge. So they are using the digital twin represented as the data of a process. The only thing is that then they stop, they don't reuse what they did. They don't think about how could I use this knowledge later on, either for scaling or for running the process in an optimized window when I'm in manufacturing. So I see one of the downsides or of the hurdles currently is that we have to overcome the silos in which we are living, because also the language and the topic of our researchers and of our R&D experts is so much different to the challenges and the thinking of our engineers and the operations guys. And if we don't find a common language, it's so hard to bring over know-how that was already elaborated, and you have to reinvent things the second time. So I would see one of the biggest challenges in adopting these digital twins is how to overcome the silos and how to find a common approach to reusing knowledge that is covered in these digital twins.
But Kim, does that answer your question? Okay, so this is your last chance to pose any more questions to Martin live. Otherwise, you can always email us or him directly. We will have a link to the recording and to the handouts if you need them afterwards. Otherwise, please allow me to put in an advert for our next Technical Tuesday, which will be on the 27th of April on the United States Pharmacopoeia. We will have a speaker from Singapore sharing about the experience and providing an overview, and we welcome you to join us. If there are no other questions, then please allow me to thank Martin for his time and sharing his expertise with us this afternoon, and to you all for joining us. And without any further ado, well, thank you all, and we wish you all a good evening and a good afternoon and a good morning to you, Martin.
Thank you, Linda, and bye.